The National Desk, America's News Now.
Nothing more than a political stunt.
Littered with loopholes, the newly leaked memo that critics say highlights the issues with President Biden's border security order. Plus, more munitions, the additional aid being sent to Ukraine, and the conditions that come along with it. And later,
we have our work cut out for us.
A new warning about how artificial intelligence could shape up banking and investing. The predictions from experts. From the nation's capital, this is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thank you for joining us on this weekend edition. We take a look at the big headlines of the week, and we look ahead at what to expect, starting with the 4 big stories we've been following this week. Record-setting triple-digit temperatures take over the West Coast. The group seeing the greatest impacts from unrelenting heat. Fauci fallout, the former head of the NIH grilled on Capitol Hill what he said about royalty payments to his agency during the pandemic. Priced out, record highs driving potential buyers out of the housing market. How many Americans are signing the dotted line? Plus, kids targeted on social media. New York and Utah taking action to protect minors from online predators. But first, how effective will President Biden's latest effort to secure the U.S. southern border be? The National Desk, Kayla Gaskins, reports the leak of an internal memo points to what critics see as a crucial loophole.
As critics get a closer look at the executive order issued this week by President Biden, meant to tighten security at the southern border.
This action will help us gain control of our border, restore order into the process.
They're noticing loopholes.
I think the appropriate term for it is a scam, and it'll take the cartels a skinny minute to figure that out, that loophole out.
The Washington Free Beacon getting a hold of an internal memo about the order that states all a non-citizen has to do to avoid removal from the U.S. is express a fear or an intention to apply for asylum. And this can be expressed at any point in the process.
That's why this is nothing more than a political stunt. And I think the majority of the American people see right through it.
In the event migrants are unaware of this, the memo also instructs signs be installed in multiple languages all over ICE facilities, at intake areas, dining rooms, medical units, housing units, and law libraries, informing non-citizens of the policy.
The government is not supposed to give legal advice, and it's certainly not supposed to coach illegal aliens on how to evade the law.
While some critics worry this will lead to an abuse of the asylum system, others argue U.S. asylum policy must be protected.
This country always has to make sure that people who are escaping political persecution, right, have a place to come. That's what the asylum laws are for.
President Biden's executive order comes just 5 months away from Election Day, as immigration remains one of his biggest perceived political weaknesses. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
The U.S. is planning to send about $225 million in new military aid to Ukraine. U.S. officials say the package will include munitions for HIMARS mortar systems and other artillery rounds. It follows a new directive that allows Ukraine to use weapons to strike certain Russian territory if forces there are attacking or preparing to attack. France also announced it will be sending warplanes to Ukraine's military. Ukraine is still forbidden from using long-range missiles offensively inside Russia. Developing now, Supreme Court justices have received nearly $5 million in gifts since the early 2000s. This data is according to watchdog group Fix the Court, which adds Justice Clarence Thomas accounts for nearly all of it. The report comes as Thomas formally disclosed Friday an additional trip he took in 2019 funded by Republican mega donor Harlan Crow. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson also discovered she received 4 tickets to Beyonce's Renaissance tour worth almost $4,000. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's chief of staff, Kelly Magsamen, is stepping down at the end of the month. Magsamen drew criticism in January after it was revealed Secretary Austin had been hospitalized for several days, but his top staffers failed to immediately inform the White House. The Defense Department said at the time Magsamen was out sick, leading to a delay in notification. Secretary Austin praised Maximin, saying, quote, "She's been the chief architect of every initiative I have launched to defend our nation." Mortgage rates hit their highest levels since early May last week. That's prompting fewer Americans to sign on the dotted line for a new mortgage. According to the Mortgage Bankers Association, total applications fell 5.2% last week compared to the week before. The average rate for a long-term rate went up to 7.07%. Right now, buyers are not only dealing with higher rates, but higher prices as well. The number of college graduates who wind up unemployed has jumped over the past year. According to Labor Department data, the unemployment rate for people with bachelor's degrees aged 20 to 29 is now above 12%, up 4% from 2023. Economists say when college grads struggle to get jobs, it means there's a greater slowdown happening in the economy. Talking about your money, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen issuing a warning to bankers about the use of artificial intelligence in the financial system. The technology presents tremendous possibilities for the sector, but experts warn it's not prepared to handle the likely disruptions, which would have a real impact on customers. Here's the National Desk's Atra Al-Nashar.
Artificial intelligence has quickly emerged as a top concern for federal officials tasked with ensuring the stability of America's financial system.
This is a rapidly evolving field. We have our work cut out for us.
Meeting Thursday with public and private sector leaders, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen acknowledged the difficulty in balancing AI's potential for innovation with its ability to do great harm. AI has already ushered in efficient ways to detect fraud and generate answers for chatbots. But Yellen and others warned the more AI is embedded in the financial system, the higher the risk it could backfire. It could be used to deploy scams and manipulate markets with misinformation.
Insufficient or faulty data could also perpetuate or introduce new biases in financial decision-making.
Federal regulation is far behind, and many banks are not prepared to mitigate these risks. JP Morgan Chase started using AI more than a decade ago. Today, the company has more than 2,000 AI or machine learning experts. CEO Jamie Dimon says the technology could be as transformative as electricity.
So like right now, you go on your phone and you can move money and buy stocks. That wasn't true 20 years ago. So yes, everything you do will change to the technology.
Like any other sector exposed to AI, there's the risk of actual people becoming obsolete. In his annual letter to shareholders, Dimon says our use of AI has the potential to augment virtually every job.
Here in Congress, lawmakers are fully aware of these risks. They hear about them from experts all the time, but even they can admit they don't have much of a track record when it comes to keeping up with tech issues.
How do we not screw it up?
So I think we have to be humble, modest enough to realize getting from, yes, we ought to have guardrails, to how we write those in a way that we could actually legislate is going to be a huge challenge.
That was back in September, and Congress is no closer to taking action, while AI technology gets more advanced each day. On Capitol Hill, I'm Atra Al-Nashar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
A man in Mexico has died after being infected with a type of bird flu never seen in humans. The World Health Organization said the 59-year-old had no known exposure to poultry or farm animals before he was diagnosed. We're told the man did have underlying health conditions. The strain of bird flu, H5N2, is different than the strain that has been infecting poultry and livestock in the U.S. Health officials stress the risk to people is still low. It looks like we will have an updated COVID-19 vaccine this fall. The FDA's vaccine advisors agreed to ask manufacturers to update the formula to address the JN1 variant. Top health officials say that variant and its descendants are the most common versions of the virus circulating right now. However, not a lot of people are sick with COVID at the moment. Only about 4% of those tested have positive results. Millions in royalty payments flowed into the National Institutes of Health during the pandemic. Dr. Anthony Fauci had to answer for the money while testifying on Capitol Hill this week. The lawsuit found that $710 million from private pharmaceutical companies went to the NIH. A large chunk of that money, $690 million, went to the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Though it has not been disclosed how much of that was paid to scientists as royalties, Fauci pushed back on the idea the money coming in for COVID was going to him.
So somebody received the $710 million.
Somebody did, but not me.
You didn't receive any royalties. Okay.
And Kentucky Senator Rand Paul is pushing a bill that requires federal government employees to disclose royalty payments and would force the NIH to say how much their scientists are being paid. When asked about whether or not the law should change, Dr. Fauci replied, "Go ahead." The United Nations Secretary General is now calling for a renewed focus on climate change. New reports say the Earth is warming up at an all-time record high. Last month was the hottest May on record, according to the European Union's Copernicus service. That marks 12 months straight of the hottest in history. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the world is spewing emissions so fast that by 2030, the higher temperatures will be a guarantee.
Almost 10 years since the Paris Agreement was adopted, the target of limiting long-term global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius is hanging by a thread.
Guterres adds global emissions need to fall by 9% each year until 2030 to keep the Paris Agreement limit alive. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration predicts this summer could be one of the hottest on record. I'm with Courtney from the Fact Check team, and we hear a lot, especially right now, about those high temperatures and health risks. And researchers have made a new connection involving pregnant women. Break down what they found.
Sure, Dee Dee. So this new study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association found a connection between heat waves and early births. Researchers analyzed 53 million births across some of the most populated metropolitan areas here in the U.S. over the last 2 decades and found rates of preterm and early term births increased 2% and 3% respectively after pregnant women experienced higher temperatures more than 4 days in a row.
All right, so preterm birth is delivery before 37 weeks and early term is between 37 and 38 weeks. What risks are involved here?
That's a really good question. Preterm and early term births are one of the leading causes of infant mortality and can also cause a wide range of health conditions like anemia, cerebral palsy, hearing and vision problems, learning disabilities, and underdeveloped organs.
All right, especially with the heat, so important to take those precautions, and especially if you're expecting.
Definitely. Yeah.
Courtney, thank you. And stick around. Courtney will be back with more on how heat can impact health, as well as your AC bill. Toyota is recalling 100,000 Tundra pickups and about 3,500 Lexus LX600 luxury SUVs. The company says there could be an issue that causes the vehicle's engines to lose power while driving. In some cases, debris during manufacturing may have been left inside the engines. So far, Toyota hasn't come up with a fix for the issue. Owners of recalled vehicles will get a letter by the end of next month. Coming up next year on the National Desk, weight loss drugs rising in popularity and price, the cheaper options on the market, and if they're safe to use. Plus, hear from Carl Szabo, part of the group engaged in several lawsuits nationwide, centered around First Amendment speech, what he says makes legislation in New York unconstitutional. New York is working on legislation that would prohibit social media companies from using algorithms to control what children see on their social media feeds. Earlier this week, I spoke with Vice President and General Counsel for NetChoice and professor at George Mason University, Carl Szabo. In your opinion, what makes this law unconstitutional? We know NetChoice is suing. Tell us more about that and about the lawsuit.
Right now, we are engaged in several lawsuits across the country on basically the same law, and it is all centered around First Amendment speech. Essentially, what we are seeing in this legislation from the state of New York is the attempt to ban the ability of New Yorkers to access information online speak online, as well as to require age verification, or essentially ID for the internet, to even access certain capabilities. And then finally, it is undermining and denying the editorial rights of websites to organize content the way they want to show it. It is unconstitutional. We have seen several courts already render decisions on similar bills on their unconstitutionality. And if New York heads down the same failed path, they should expect the same failed outcome.
Zeroing in on New York, as you just mentioned, what do you think makes this law different from other states who have passed laws, again, restricting social media for children?
So this one goes specifically after the algorithms. We've seen similar efforts in states like California, where a Democratic judge ruled in favor of net choice against the state of California, saying it violates the editorial rights. But New York seems to be trying to hang all of their constitutionality on this notion that the rights of a website to organize content the way they want is not protected by the First Amendment. And that, of course, doesn't make sense. They are ordering websites to organize content in what is called a chronological feed, which means the most recent post is the one you see first. If it's about self-harm or eating disorders or something like that, that's the post that 17-year-olds will see. Under the current regime, websites can decide what content is at the top. And if it is objectionable content like that, it gets relegated to the bottom. So at the end of the day, the very thing the state of New York is trying to block is the very problem they are going to create.
In your mind, what is the perfect solution?
Yeah, unfortunately, there is no silver bullet. Parents cannot be replaced by government. Parents cannot be replaced by social media. So what the government needs to do is work with parents. You can do something as simple as a PSA. It's 11 p.m. Do you know where your kid's cell phone is at? They could do what we've seen done in Florida and Virginia, which is require digital education in schools as part of the course curriculum. There are many steps that are constitutional and actually work. And that's what we expect states to do, not continue to double down on unconstitutional approaches, because an unconstitutional law protects 0 children.
Carl Szabo, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us tonight on the National Desk. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Weight loss drugs like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro are growing in popularity, but so are their price tags. To try and save some money, some people are looking for cheaper options, but experts say you need to do your research. Here's the National Desk, Jeff Harris.
Experts tell us right now people are using a few alternative options that are cheaper than the prescription weight loss drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy, but they say just because they're cheaper doesn't mean they're safe.
A professor in the School of Pharmacy at the University of Connecticut, C. Michael White, tells us one alternative comes from compounding pharmacies, who are not allowed to create a drug like a drug manufacturer.
They're allowed to create for an individual a product to help them get the activities of the drug, but in a non-traditional sense.
White says people are also searching for semaglutide or tirzepatide peptides, 2 ingredients found in weight loss drugs like Wegovy and Mounjaro.
It'll bring you to some different sites, and it'll allow you to be able to buy these vials that have the powdered active ingredient in it.
A professor at the University of Calgary, Dr. David Lau, says while these options may be cheaper, they aren't safe for a number of reasons.
The compounding doesn't necessarily guarantee that the active ingredient is actually present.
He says if you're looking for medication, Qsymia and Contrave have both been approved for weight management and are available in the U.S.
These are all medications that work on appetite. Some are more effective than others.
When it comes to price, here's how much GoodRx says some weight loss drugs cost before insurance. Wegovy comes in around $1,300, Qsymia around $200, and then Contrave right around $600. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
Just ahead here on the National Desk, a high school basketball team stranded at the airport, sparking new protections for airline passengers. The law making it easier for you to get your money back from a canceled flight. Plus, people pretending someone has died to get you to give money. The new scam running rampant on Facebook. The National Desk team of reporters is bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in Seattle, where a basketball coach is celebrating new airline regulations after being stranded with his team.
This is not how Coach Mike Bethia and the Rainier Beach High School boys basketball team wanted to spend the days leading up to Christmas in 2022, sleeping on the floor at the airport in Las Vegas during a massive winter storm. The group of 32 was trying to get back to Seattle after competing in a national tournament.
They missed Christmas, but we made the best of it.
Their story became the catalyst for new legislation, spearheaded by Washington Senator Maria Cantwell.
Consumers need clear communication. They need the options communicated after them so that they can make their best travel plans.
In April, Congress approved a $105 billion bill to reauthorize the FAA for 5 years. The package includes consumer protections like guaranteed refunds if a domestic flight is delayed more than 3 hours and if an international flight is delayed more than 6 hours. No fees for families to sit together, and it triples the penalty for consumer violations from $25,000 to $75,000. The Bethias were reimbursed for the trip. They say they were stunned the CFO of Southwest Airlines called to talk to them about what happened.
In Ohio, security watchdogs are warning about the "I can't believe he is gone" scam. People pretending someone has died to get you to give money. Scammers put up shocking content on a hacked Facebook account like a terrible crash, accompanied with a fabricated news headline that looks real. But the link will likely take you to a fake survey, malware download, or a spam list.
And I've had several people recently reach out to me and say, hey, my Facebook account's been hacked. What can I do about it? And unfortunately, it can be really tricky to unwind that.
Security experts recommend strong and different passwords for all of your accounts. If not, you're enabling scammers to not only get your information, but also to scam people you know. Car manufacturer KEYE is cracking down on targeted thefts of its car models. The company's technicians stopped in Fresno, California last weekend to offer free anti-theft upgrades and steering wheel locks to KEYE owners.
It makes me feel great that it's something that that they're trying to do to prevent this from happening to anyone else, and it's not going to cost anything out of my pocket.
For drivers who couldn't attend the event, KEYE says you can contact your local dealership to make an appointment. Still ahead, the data of more than 500 million customers compromised. The action now advised by Ticketmaster if you have an account. Red Lobster are now planning to shut down several more restaurants following its bankruptcy plan. These are the states where the most amount of stores are expected to close soon. The chain already closed nearly 50 locations. They plan to sell the business to its lenders in return for financing to keep operating. Taking a look at the top trending stories on our website right now. After years of delays, Boeing Starliner launched this week. The rocket is now docked at the International Space Station while its astronauts spend 8 days on the orbiting laboratory. Ticketmaster users are being encouraged to change their passwords after a massive data breach. It includes things like credit card numbers, emails, addresses, phone numbers, and ticket purchases. The Northeast U.S. is bracing for an invasion of giant flying spiders. The venomous Juro spider boasts 4-inch-long legs and can parachute through the air. It does not pose a threat to humans, only small insects caught in its web. Those stories and more available right now at thenationaldesk.com. A San Francisco woman is suing prebiotic soda brand Poppi, saying the drink's marketing claims mislead consumers about its health benefits. The lawsuit alleges the amount of prebiotic fiber in a single can of Poppi isn't enough to produce meaningful gut health benefits. The suit claims a person would have to drink 4 or more cans of the beverage to get any prebiotic fiber health advantages. In a statement, the Austin, Texas-based company said it stands behind its products and calls the lawsuit baseless. Spotify is raising its subscription prices for the second time this year. The music streaming service is increasing the cost of its ad-free premium plan by $1 to $11.99 a month for individuals starting in July. The price of Spotify has increased by 20% in the last 2 years. The company says the hike is necessary to improve user experience. Ahead in our next half hour, online bots influencing U.S. policy. The American ally reportedly running a campaign on X, hoping to influence congressional Democrats. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now. You can catch us live weekdays from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time, and anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. We'll be right back.
The National Desk, America's News Now.
The prosecution in Hunter Biden's federal gun trial rests its case. The witnesses that could be called by the defense. Plus,
I became a man and a soldier overnight.
On the front lines, a D-Day veteran speaks on the day that changed the course of history 80 years later. And feeling the heat, record-setting summer temps could up the cost of your energy bill. How much prices are expected to spike? From the nation's capital, this is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Didi Gatton. Thank you for joining us. And we are nearing the end of the federal case against President Joe Biden's son, Hunter. It's expected to wrap up Monday or Tuesday next week. Friday, the trial ending on an emotional note following testimony from Hunter Biden's daughter, Naomi. Christine Frizzell breaks down what we learned.
The government has now rested its case against Hunter Biden. Prosecutors presenting 10 witnesses in 5 days, including 3 who had been romantically involved with him, including Hallie Biden, who had been married to his late brother, Beau, and later dated Hunter. Their text messages in the days following the gun purchase, in which he tells her he had been sleeping on a car and smoking crack, also submitted as evidence, as well as surveillance video of Hallie Biden disposing of the gun in a grocery store parking lot trash can after she found it in his car.
The Hunter Biden legal team wants to say, hey, look, he only had the gun for 11 days. I expect the prosecution, though, in close will say, well, you only had it for 11 days because Hallie Biden threw it away. We don't know if you ever would have gotten rid of the gun while you were on drugs.
The crux of the case, though, centers on whether Hunter Biden knowingly lied on this application about using or being addicted to drugs at the time. His defense team seeking to muddy the waters and cast reasonable doubt, calling an employee at the gun store who acknowledged there was something wrong with the ATF application, but did not give specifics about what. An emotional Naomi Biden also took the stand. Hunter Biden's daughter telling the jury she had visited her father while he was in a California rehab facility in late summer 2018, where she said he seemed like the clearest he had been since her uncle Bo died, adding, he seemed really great. Also testifying she'd seen him in New York on October 18, 2018, and that he still seemed good, though text messages between her and her father showed her frustrated with his behavior. That date significant because he bought the gun on October 12th and had it until it was thrown away on October 23rd.
The defense team seems to be honing in on literally saying the day that he bought the gun, that the government hasn't proven that he was using drugs that day.
Day 5 of the case wrapped up earlier than usual. Defense attorneys saying President Biden's brother James would not be called to testify after all. But they are still deciding on one final factor, whether Hunter Biden himself will take the stand. I'm Christine Frizzell for the National Desk.
Developing now, a Georgia appeals court has halted the election interference case against former President Donald Trump and his co-defendants. The move comes as a panel of judges weighs in on whether Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis should be disqualified. The new order filed on Wednesday from the Georgia Court of Appeals is the latest indication that a trial in the Georgia case will not happen before the 2024 presidential election. The appeals court is expected to rule on the disqualification issue by March 2025, though it could issue a ruling sooner. Some Republicans are changing their mind when it comes to crime and the presidency, following the conviction of former President Donald Trump. Back in April, just 17% of Republicans surveyed by YouGov said convicted felons should be allowed to be president. It's now 58% in YouGov's latest poll. Back in April, 37% of Republicans said they would not be willing to vote for someone convicted of a felony. It's now dropped to 14%. New details: the suspect accused of killing 4 women and leaving their corpses scattered along Gilgo Beach in Long Island has now been charged in the deaths of 2 more women. 60-year-old Rex Heuermann is set to appear before a judge to face charges. He killed Jessica Taylor, who disappeared in 2003, and Sandra Costilla, who was killed in 1993. The new charges come just days after authorities finished searching Heuermann's home. Prosecutors say they found a planning document in Heuermann's basement used as a blueprint in the killings. He pleaded not guilty. Relatives of victims of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting are going after Alex Jones's media company InfoWars. They're asking the bankruptcy judge to liquidate InfoWars completely instead of letting Jones reorganize it. They won a $1.5 billion lawsuit against him after he called the 2012 shooting a hoax. A liquidation ruling would mean Jones has to sell his company and its assets, but he could keep his home and other personal belongings. The New York Times reports that Israel is now using an online bot campaign to influence U.S. policy. The Israeli government reportedly paid for such an influence campaign targeting House Democrats not long after the October 7th attack. A marketing group called Stoic reportedly led the effort. The report comes as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is scheduled to address Congress next month, which some Democrats are against.
I don't think that it is productive right now whatsoever for Netanyahu to be addressing Congress. I see not only is there very little purpose to it, but I think it is patently unproductive.
Israel's influence campaign is reportedly still ongoing on the X platform, while Meta says it disrupted the campaign. Israel is denying involvement. Right now, Russia is working to disrupt the upcoming Summer Olympics in Paris. According to the Microsoft Threat and Analysis Center, Moscow is ramping up online disinformation campaigns against France and the Olympic Committee. Fake news articles and even a film make claims of corruption and point to potential violence against Israelis during the Games. This year, Russian athletes are banned from participating under their country's flag. This past Thursday marked the 80th anniversary of D-Day, when the Allied forces of World War II stormed the beaches of Normandy in what was the largest amphibious invasion in military history. Experts estimate there are about 100,000 World War II veterans still alive today. Some of them are in France to mark the occasion alongside world leaders, including President Biden. The National Desk Atra El-Nashar spoke with a D-Day veteran who was on the front lines about how that day changed the course of history.
You are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you.
80 years later, Marvin Gilmore, who turns 100 this year, still remembers.
I became a man and a soldier overnight.
Early morning, June 6, 1944, Gilmore and his fellow soldiers in an all-black anti-aircraft artillery battalion were part of an armada of more than 7,000 ships and boats on the English Channel, supported by about 12,000 Allied aircraft. Their orders: invade Nazi-occupied France. General Eisenhower warned it would not be easy.
Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely.
Being African-American, we were the first on the line.
The price of a liberated Europe was paid in lives. Gilmore saw it firsthand on Utah and Omaha beaches.
When we climbed that hill, all we were trained to kill or be killed. War is gruesome. And I think most soldiers came back, we don't talk about it. We really don't.
2,501 Americans were among the more than 4,400 Allied troops killed on D-Day. It changed the course of the war, igniting the Allies' defeat of the German Third Reich. An unconditional surrender came 11 months later.
What if the Allies had failed that day? What do we know about where we'd be or how the war could have unfolded?
You don't know, right? In Eisenhower, you read Eisenhower's message going out. Well, Eisenhower had in his pocket that message accepting responsibility if the mission had failed, if he had to withdraw, if it didn't work.
Memorials like this one in Normandy are a tribute to the bravery and sacrifice of veterans like Gilmore and those who never came home. They also serve as a reminder of what we owe them.
And I think showing that gratitude by living in the way that honors them.
There's a phrase that goes, the best way to honor our troops is to be an American worth fighting for.
Yeah, that's the key. That is the key.
In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Such a moving piece. To a consumer alert now, most middle-class Americans say they are struggling financially. A new poll by the National True Cost of Living Coalition finds that more than 60% of middle-class earners say that's the case. The major sources of financial stress include saving for the future, paying for emergency expenses, paying down debt, saving for retirement, and affordable housing. The price of your next plane ticket may be higher due to global inflation and jet fuel costs. That's according to the International Air Transport Association. There's also been a global push for airlines to use sustainable aviation fuel, which is in short supply. The association estimates industry profits are expected to reach nearly $60 billion in 2024. New details. Boeing CEO Dave Calhoun is now set to testify at a Senate hearing on June 18th. He'll answer questions about whistleblower allegations and safety questions surrounding some of their planes. This hearing comes after a whistleblower accused the company of making shortcuts when the planes are assembled. Boeing has denied the accusations. Calhoun announced he is set to step down from his job at the end of the year. Good Earth Lighting is recalling more than 1.2 million units after reports of multiple fires, one of which killed one person. The U.S. Consumer Safety Commission posted the announcement on Thursday. The rechargeable lights can overheat and create a serious hazard for homeowners. According to Good Earth, the product has caused at least 6 house fires. This summer is shaping up to be one of the hottest on record, and many Americans are already feeling those high temperatures. I'm with Courtney from the Fact Check team. We talk about this pretty much every day.
Yep.
Heat affects health in several ways, and it's actually the leading cause of weather-related deaths. And it looks like heat-related deaths are on the rise.
Yep, I looked into it, and they are, according to the Department of Health and Human Services. Take a look. You'll see there were around 2,300 heat-related deaths last year, up from around 1,700 in 2022. But if we look back to 2004, the number was under 300.
And the number of extreme heat days in some states is 5 times higher than it was 40 years ago, highlighting the importance of air conditioning, which, speaking of, is expected to only get more expensive this summer.
Yeah, it is, Dee Dee. I found this new report from the National Energy Assistance Directors Association. The average cost of cooling your home from June to September is set to hit $719, which is almost 8% higher than last year, and up from an average of $476 a decade ago.
And as you might imagine, these costs vary geographically.
That's right, they do. For example, costs will be as low as $580 on average in states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Ohio, but as high as $860 in states like Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. And if we look at the increase from last summer by region, the Mid-Atlantic and Pacific are expected to see the biggest jumps, both over 12%, while the West South Central region is barely expected to see a 2% increase.
All right, so big difference there. Courtney, thank you. And for more on this Fact Check team topic, including links to their sources, scan the QR code on your screen or visit thenationaldesk.com. Still to come, our team of correspondents breaks down this week in Washington, from fallout over former President Trump's conviction to President Biden's executive order on the border.
And welcome back. Our Washington Bureau covers the nation's capital every day, reporting on the important issues facing the country and how they impact you. Our team of correspondents is here to share their insights on the stories they've been covering. The fallout continues following former President Donald Trump's conviction on 34 felony charges, with many asking whether Trump would try to exact legal revenge on his political opponents if he wins in November. National correspondent Matt Galko, what are folks saying about that?
Yeah, it's a growing concern, certainly among Democrats who are taking some of these threats or some of these statements that have been floating out in the media ether. They're taking it very seriously. Now, here's what we know about Donald Trump. Last year, he did say that if he was elected again, he would get a special prosecutor to go after Joe Biden. When he was running in 2016, lock her up was a big part of that campaign when he was talking about Hillary Clinton. So Democrats say those are serious things that he has said. But just this past week, he also, on one program, left the door open to doing just that, going after some of his political opponents after his guilty verdict. But at the same time, he told Fox News that that would be bad for the country, and the country needs to come together, and some of these agencies need to stop being weaponized. So it's up in the air where he stands for sure, but Democrats are certainly worried, and there are a lot of conservative voices out there who also believe that a tit for tat, a back and forth, I'm going to go after you in the court system, and then their opponent goes after them, that would just lead to a downward spiral for the country. So there are likely enough voices out there that will eventually, maybe, talk him down from the ledge from doing that if he does win a second term.
Well, we'll see. You know, Donald Trump tends to talk a big game when it comes to these things. Just look at his history of threatening lawsuits against the media. A lot of letters that get written, a lot of lawyers get involved, and then the lawsuits never follow through. So we'll see what happens in this case. Of course, we'll be, I'm sure, talking about it a lot between now and November. Meanwhile, President Biden's son, Hunter, is in the midst of his own trial where he's facing federal gun charges. National correspondent Christine Frizzell, what's happened so far?
Yeah, Steve, during the last week, we heard from several witnesses who testified about Hunter Biden's drug use. His ex-wife, his ex-girlfriend, and also Hallie Biden, who was married to Hunter's late brother, Beau, and who later dated Hunter. And, you know, is also, incidentally, the one who found and threw away in a trash can this gun that Hunter purchased. Perhaps the most compelling witness, though, was Hunter Biden himself. It was his voice from the audio version of his book, Beautiful Things, really detailing the extent of his addiction to crack cocaine. But you know, I think that this is important. His drug use and abuse is not in dispute. What the big question here is whether at the time he filled out this gun application on October 12, 2018, whether Hunter Biden knowingly lied about using and being addicted to unlawful drugs. His defense is trying to make the case that there's no evidence that he believed he was addicted to drugs at the time. There are text messages literally from the next day and the next few days where Hunter Biden tells Hallie Biden that he was smoking crack on the hood of a car. But again, the defense is trying to poke holes in the idea, like, is there evidence that this actually happened? Is there a reasonable doubt? And also they're going to try to really, you know, make a compelling case to the jury that they should feel sympathy for him. They're hoping as well for a hung jury. So it's going to be interesting to see how the next few days really plays out in this case.
And what will also be interesting is the long-term effect of this, as Democrats hope that former President Trump's legal issues hurt him during the campaign. Republicans are hoping that Hunter Biden's legal issues may have an effect on President Biden's campaign. Meanwhile, President Biden is struggling with voters on the immigration issue. He signed an executive order this past week that he says will tighten the border. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins, his critics are saying it's too little too late.
Yeah, Steve, some of the critics are saying this is too little too late, but critics are also zeroing in on this executive order itself, saying there's some pretty critical loopholes that migrants and even cartels will soon get wind of, and it's going to basically keep this executive order from actually being effective. So one of the loopholes they're zeroing in on is one that's highlighted in this document leak of an internal memo, which states that all a migrant has to do is say that they're afraid of going back to their home country, afraid of deportation, or that they do have plans to apply for asylum at some point in the future, and then that will stop the deportation process in its tracks. And signs explaining this are being put up at ICE facilities in multiple languages, in the dining rooms, in the law libraries, in the intake areas, to make sure that migrants are aware of this policy. Some think that this is just coaching them as a way to evade the law. But Democrats, on the other hand, the ones that are supportive of this executive order by President Biden, are saying that it is crucial to protect Americans' asylum policy, that this is a big part of who we are as a country and who we've always been. Steve?
Kayla, Christine, Matt, excellent reporting as always. Thank you all for your hard work. Back to you.
Up next here, an anti-Semitic attack on a Jewish family in Seattle, putting a neighborhood on edge. The investigation now underway. Plus, a Florida man in jail after crashing his car into a jail. His erratic actions caught on camera. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. From a Jewish family in Washington state targeted in a hate crime to a man witnesses say tried breaking into a Florida jail. We're taking the pulse of America, but we start in Las Vegas, where neighbors are fed up with squatters and the problem is only getting worse.
Many residents at the apartment complex near Twain and University Center Drive say crime at the Tides at Paradise North Apartments is almost a daily occurrence. Now, surveillance video captured over the span of a couple of months at the complex shows what appears to be people attempting to break into an upstairs unit. But neighbors we spoke with say that's just one of the many dilapidated units at the complex where squatters have taken up residence. Now, in another surveillance video captured less than a week ago, Metro Police can be seen escorting what appears to be at least 4 squatters in one of the units. Now, after experiencing several break-ins, neighbors say they hope the management company will step up to help provide a stronger sense of security.
It's definitely not a good feeling at all, and it's kind of put me on edge to where sometimes I haven't been able to sleep, and now there's no longer any security company that's doing anything inside of here.
I would never in a million years think somebody try to break into jail. Break out? Yeah. But break in? It's crazy.
In the surveillance video, Leedy can be seen plowing his car into the lobby, smashing the door, and leaving tire marks along the sidewalk. Deputies say when Leedy got out of the car, he was half naked.
He was disrobed other than wearing a lady's top. He, at that point, threw 2 rubber snakes and multiple cell phones into the lobby, into the actual structure here, and then started pouring motor oil all over his vehicle and then the floor where he was, threatening to light the car and himself on fire.
The incident raising a red flag when it comes to security at the jail. Budenseek says they will now look at beefing up protection around the sheriff's office and the front of the jail.
The damage is visible above a window panel where a sign on display reads, "Seattle stands with Israel." The Jewish man who lives here, who worries for the safety of his wife and 2 young kids, says he takes this scene personally.
Very reminiscent of what happened in Nazi Germany. If we remember Kristallnacht, a night in Germany where all the Jewish businesses' windows were smashed, and here is my house having its windows smashed.
Seattle police confirmed they responded to the reported hate crime in May and found broken glass and a rock in the home. The victim tells us his wife took this photo of the damage. They estimate the rock was the size of a couple softballs.
At the end of the day, we want our neighbors and our community to stand with us because we can disagree, but violence and hate has absolutely no home in Seattle or anywhere else.
Still ahead, the stories making headlines next week, from the legal battle over a controversial immigration law to the start of the G7 summit. Looking ahead to stories making headlines this week, on Monday, a federal judge is set to hear arguments on whether to block a controversial immigration law in Iowa. The law, which would go into effect July 1st, would allow local law enforcement to arrest migrants who have been previously deported. Starting Thursday, President Biden will attend the G7 summit in Italy. He's expected to discuss using frozen Russian funds to support Ukraine. By the end of the week, demolition is expected to begin on the 1200 building at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. The teardown of the building, where 14 students and 3 staff members were killed in 2018, is expected to take several weeks. Developing now, you are looking at what is considered the first 100% 3D printed homes built from local wood fiber and bioresin materials. It was created by researchers at the University of Maine. Looks fantastic. The single family home is 600 square feet. It was created with the polymer 3D printer. Researchers hope to use it to address the state's housing crisis. And that'll be all for us on the weekend edition of the National Desk, America's News Now. Don't forget, you can catch us live from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Check your local listings. You can also watch us online and catch up with the latest headlines on thenationaldesk.com. Thanks for watching the weekend edition of the National Desk. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and from all of us here, have a great week.